What's up everyone? I feel like every time I make a YouTube video I get more and more casual and chill with it, and I literally didn't prepare for this at all today, and I think I said this exact thing in the last video, but we're just gonna see how it goes. Oh, you can see my loom in the back. Oh, I feel like I should show you guys what I've made. Okay, I'm gonna show you. Okay, so I hope this is in focus. I made this loom. It's made out of a picture frame that I got from Michael's, and I did a really sketchy job of putting these nails in. Yeah, it's honestly, it's a weapon. It's a weapon, but yeah, I've been weaving out here. So I'm making this cute little tapestry. She's about 75% done, and hopefully I'll get that done in like the next couple of weeks, but that's been great. The last thing I want to address is my hair situation. I feel like you can't even tell, but I have bleached the bottom of my hair 4 times at this point, and it has barely changed color at all. Like if I put it up to my roots, you can kind of tell that it's lighter, but I'm getting it cut. I'm actually getting it cut tomorrow, so I'm gonna have super short hair in the next video that you see, and I'm also dyeing it. I'm not gonna tell you guys what color it is. You will see in the next video. Actually, no, you won't, because I'm filming my next video before I dye it. So it'll be 2 weeks until you see it. Unless you follow me on Instagram, then you'll probably see it in a week. But yeah, pretty stoked on that. Never dyed my hair before, probably because I've always been way too much of a wimp about it, because I used to be hella insecure, and any like color change in my hair would have been like, oh, what if it looks bad? What are people gonna think? And now I could not care less. So we're going for it. I have no reason not to. Helps that I'm my own boss, so I can dye it any color I want, which is so sweet. But yeah, that's my life update. Hope you enjoyed that. Super relevant to today's conversation. I don't know, I think I'm on one today. What this video is actually about is what it's like to have an eating disorder or suffer from body dysmorphia or disordered eating of any kind. And I asked you guys on Instagram to send me responses. And then another thing I addressed was, what are some misconceptions or stigmas around eating disorders? So I'm gonna cover all of that today. You guys sent me such amazing, thoughtful answers, and I related to so much of it, which I'll get into later. Really, I'm just gonna dive in and read what you guys said. Also, I'm on my bed. This is the loudest bed. It's ridiculous. And I also have this mattress topper on it that's like so squishy that you just kind of melt into it, which is kind of nice when you're sleeping on it, but when you're trying to sit on it and like have good posture, it's absolutely ridiculous. Let's dive in. Okay, so one of the first things that people said was having an eating disorder is like constantly thinking about food, what you ate, what to eat next, if you were good or bad, and then also the compensation. Yeah, it's just kind of a thing that's always on your mind, and everything you do relates to food and how much you ate and how much you're going to eat, and it's so overwhelming and so exhausting, and you can't really dive into anything else in your life, at least not at the capacity that you normally could, because the eating disorder is stealing so much of that mental real estate. Someone else said a constant thought of food, when, what, how much to eat, who you're going to eat with. That's a good point to bring up too. Like I definitely ditched a lot of social events because I was so afraid of eating in front of other people, or also like if I was binging, then I'd be afraid of people like seeing how much I would eat. If I was restricting, I was also afraid of them seeing how little I ate, because people always made comments about it. So yeah, I kind of just didn't have a social life for a really long time. Yeah, one person described it as like you're falling into the pits of hell with no way out. I know that might sound dramatic to somebody who's never been through it before, but it really does feel like that. I feel like this thing where you're just experiencing constant suffering and it's never gonna end, because it feels like there is no hope. It feels like, oh, I'm just gonna be this way forever. Someone else said exhausting and so consuming. So consuming in so many ways. Time, money, energy, resources, brain space, all of those things. It just like eats away at your life. Someone said losing consciousness after purging. Yeah, so, well, I was gonna dive into the details of that, but I don't even think it's necessary. All that needs to be said from that is it gets so extreme that you can get to the point of losing consciousness. I mean, an eating disorders have the second highest mortality rate of any other mental illness, followed by opioid addiction. So it is no joke. It is very scary, and lots of people die from it. Somebody said, for bulimia, being so weak and dizzy after purging that you can't do anything. Yeah, and not even just after purging either. Like, I remember feeling so weak and dizzy even when I just wasn't eating enough, because you just don't have energy, and I was over exercising. For me personally, like, every time I stood up, I would almost pass out. I remember in high school, every time I'd stand up from my chair to go to my next class, I would like have to hold on to the wall, and I'd be walking down the hallways like having to put one arm against the wall so that I wouldn't fall over and lose my balance. Another person said, hell, hard work, and frustrating. Yeah, 100%. One person said, it's like having both a best friend plus a demon inside your head. I want to explain that a little further because that might sound confusing to somebody who's never experienced this, but the eating disorder is often described as a life raft. So I'll often ask people or ask clients, you know, like, how has your disordered eating, dieting, how has it served you? How has it tried to save you in your life? Because it doesn't just exist in a vacuum. There's always a reason why the eating disorder is there. So for me, it was to cope with stress. It was to cope with feeling worthless. It was to feel like I had control over something. And when you're succeeding with the eating disorder, when you're shrinking your body, when you're following its rules, it validates you. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you're doing something and accomplishing something. And at the same time, it's stealing your entire life away from you. One other response I got was, it feels lonely, sad, obsessive, like an emotional roller coaster. You're socially restricted and it's just 100% shit. It is really lonely. It's isolating because you miss out on all of these events. People don't understand what you're going through. It's hard to explain if they haven't been through it before. That social restriction. I love the way she put that. I've never described it as social restriction, but that's essentially what it is you're restricting yourself from being social. Someone else said, you're constantly comparing what, how much, and when you're eating to the eating habits of your friends and family. Yeah, so that can either be through like judgment of what other people are eating. So not only are you hyper aware of what you're eating, but you're also paying attention to all these other people in your life, and you're looking at people on Instagram and what they're eating. You're looking at what celebrities are eating. It's like constantly on your mind, and you know, it's already exhausting enough to hyper focus on yourself, but because it's on the forefront of your mind, you're gonna see it in other people too. There's also another comment that says being super body conscious all the time, and that is a big part of how much you're able to enjoy yourself. Yeah, so like you can't even be present when you do things because all you're thinking about is like, what are they thinking about my body? What are they thinking about my body? Because you're always thinking about your body, and then you also assume that everybody else is too. And not to mention, we also live in a culture where we are super body focused, and all these ads and all this media is so focused on how people's bodies look, and it's the main topic of conversation, like what new diet are you on, how much weight have you lost? So it's hard to escape, and the eating disorder only exacerbates it. So I got quite a few other comments about what it's like to have an eating disorder, and essentially they all sort of said similar things. They were all very similar to the ones that I already read off, where it's just exhausting. It feels like there's a demon inside your head, but it also feels like your best friend. Everything in your life becomes about food and body image. You can't be present. You can't enjoy yourself. You're lonely. You're depressed. You're socially restricted. You feel like crap. It's just this obsessiveness with food and body. I remember just never being able to not think about it. One, because I was either hungry, so food was on the forefront of my mind. I was trying to restrict the food, so I had to like actively tell myself no constantly. And then it's like anytime you walk past a reflection, you're analyzing your body, you're touching your body constantly, like grabbing parts of you that you don't like, even if you're just sitting there trying to work. You're on social media comparing yourself to other people's bodies and what they're eating. I mean, it literally becomes everything. So one of my followers who I adore so much, she's been so supportive of my page from the very beginning. I don't want to say who it is because I didn't ask her permission to say her name, but if you're listening and I know you're watching this, you know who you are. And she shared in detail about her experience with disordered eating. So I am going to pull up her response right now. So she said, I think I never went through an ED, but I had bad body image and a bad relationship with food and exercise. For me, it was like thinking I was trying to be healthy and getting my body at its ideal weight. I remember going to the doctor and getting so frustrated when I gained weight, but so proud and satisfied when I lost. I remember reducing my food portions at the point when I used to feel so freaking hungry right about falling asleep, and also feeling proud of myself because of that. Like, not giving my body the fuel it needed was something to feel proud of. And also, I was thinking that my stomach was getting smaller. I thought I was doing all these things in order to be healthier, and that's what I used to say to people. But I was tricking myself because inside I just wanted to be more accepted and feel pretty. And when people noticed I was losing weight and complimented me, I just thought something like, you need to stay like this. You need to keep this body. So I think having any kind of issue with eating, exercise, or body image, it's like cheating on yourself. You say something out loud to make yourself and others believe that what you're doing is for your health, but on the inside, you're just thinking that you'll never be enough and you have to look like someone else to feel the acceptance and validation you're looking for. What's really interesting, first of all, thank you for the person that sent me that. The thing that's interesting about that is the point that she made about you convince yourself that you're doing it for your health. And that's what the eating disorder often tries to tell us. And she also mentioned that she was never formally diagnosed. And so many women struggle with this, and maybe they don't have a full-blown eating disorder, but so many women struggle with body image. They struggle with thinking about food all the time. They struggle with constantly restricting, constantly picking apart their body and basing their worth on it, and making their whole lives about restricting food. And it's just so sad and so fucked up. And we need to change the narrative around body sizes. We need to stop praising people for losing weight and criticizing them when they gain it. We need to just stop being so weight focused, because the truth is weight does not paint the entire picture. I recently made a post on Instagram about why it's really harmful to comment on people's weight ever. And even if you think you're praising them or that they want the validation, please go read that post and see why we should never comment on anybody's weight. The next thing I wanted to get into was the misconceptions about eating disorders. You guys sent me some great responses for this too. I'm really excited to talk about this. So one of the responses I got was, after recovering from an eating disorder, some people will ask, why are you always starving yourself? I think what that person was trying to get at was, there is this misconception that people with eating disorders are just trying to lose weight and it's all about vanity, and that they're choosing to just not eat, when in reality it is a mental illness. Like I said, it doesn't exist in the vacuum, and it always comes from a place that's deeper than what it seems. For me, my eating disorder spiraled because I was using it as a coping mechanism for everything else going on in my life, and I was so deeply and madly insecure that I turned to this thing to feel better about myself and to feel in control, because I felt like so many things in my life were out of control. It's really harmful to assume that people with eating disorders are just choosing not to eat and they're just like, oh, they just want to get thinner. But the truth is, it is, like I said, a mental illness, and when we have this stigma that it's a choice and it's coming from vanity, these people end up not getting the help that they need, and people will take it less seriously. This person said they think you're the healthiest person they know because you work out all the time and eat so well. Eat so well in quotation marks. Yeah, this is so true, and I think this is really important to mention, because maybe if you're watching this, you know what to look out for here. Oftentimes it is disguised as pursuing health, and it was for me. I was working out all the time. I was very particular about my food, which looking back we can now see that was orthorexia. And people were always like, oh my god, you're so healthy, when really I was struggling with an eating disorder and I was the least healthy I'd ever been. My BMI, which by the way, the BMI is complete BS, which I talk about in other videos, so I'm not going to go into right now. My BMI was in a healthy range, but I had all these other health issues. I was dizzy all the time. I wasn't sleeping. I lost my period. I had fatigue. I couldn't think straight. I was almost always on the verge of passing out. All of these things. And my doctors were telling me that I was healthy. And like my blood pressure was insanely low. And nobody ever questioned it, because I think even doctors have this stigma where they're like, oh yeah, you're just working out and like you're eating healthy, like there's no problem. But there's very key signs that we need to look for, and there's very specific questions that we need to be asking so that we can identify if somebody is struggling. So this person said like 3 in one message, and I'm going to go through each of them individually. So the first one was, you have to be very thin or very fat. So the truth is, eating disorders come in all shapes and sizes. Again, I never looked emaciated. when I was my sickest, I still looked like I had like what was deemed as a culturally normal body. And like I definitely looked thinner, but nobody was concerned about the weight that I was at. So weight doesn't necessarily determine your severity of an eating disorder or how much you're struggling. Okay, second thing she said was, you physically can't eat sweets or you'll freak out. Yeah, not all eating disorders are about not eating sweets. So, oh no, my camera's about to die. No. All right, I'm gonna charge my camera and then come back. My extra battery broke, so I just charged this one for like 5 minutes. Hopefully it's enough to finish this video. The second part, oh my god, I swear I cannot sit comfortably on this bed at all. Alrighty, so the second part of this comment was that you physically can't eat sweets or you'll freak out. So yeah, not all eating disorders are about focusing on what types of food to eat. A lot of times it's just like struggling to eat at all, just fear of any food at all, just calories in general, or, you know, it's related to binging and purging, not necessarily focus on the sweet. So that is a common misconception. It's not always about the types of food. You have to hate food. Yeah, people with eating disorders don't hate food necessarily. It's not about that. It's not about not liking food. It's so much more than that. Or not even about that at all, really. Okay. Another person said, only those who are thin have an eating disorder. It's not true, and it leads to misdiagnosis for large people. Like I said earlier, eating disorders come in every shape and size. And I've heard stories from a lot of people where they go to the doctor or a therapist, and anybody really, any person, any health professional, and the person will say, oh, you don't have an eating disorder, you're not thin enough. Which is so sad that that's still such a common misconception, but it really is, and it's just not true at all. You can be any size and be suffering from an eating disorder. Yeah, so actually like 4 people sent me that specifically, just this idea that you're not thin enough to have an eating disorder. Another misconception that came up was that eating disorders are about having a lot of willpower. So there's this idea that like, oh, if you have an eating disorder, it's just because you have so much willpower around food. This is actually not true. So if you're suffering from orthorexia, anorexia, even bulimia, it's not that it's easy, or no, it's not that it's like that it takes a lot of determination and willpower to not eat food. It's actually harder to eat food than it is to eat it. So for someone who's suffering from an eating disorder, the real willpower comes from eating food. It would take them more willpower to eat something that's off limits or a fear food than it would to avoid food. So something that I have to work on clients with so often is navigating fear foods and getting over the fear of foods, and kind of doing an exposure therapy where we make a list of the foods that scare them, and then slowly together we tackle them one by one and expose them to these foods and show them like, hey, it's okay to eat this. And it's really hard for people. I went through the same thing. It is so hard. For the longest time, there were foods that I would avoid at all costs, and it took grit and determination, and that took willpower to just be able to eat a piece of bread. So there are tons more misconceptions, myths about eating disorders, and of course there's a million ways to experience an eating disorder, and all I gave you guys was just a few perspectives. So take it all with a grain of salt and know that it varies for everybody, but I hope that hearing other people's experiences was helpful for you and helped you get some insight on what it's like to suffer from something like an eating disorder or disordered eating. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I have a video about my personal eating disorder experience and my recovery experience on my channel, so if you're interested in seeing that, you can check it out there. But otherwise, if you watched this video all the way through, I super appreciate that, and you taking the time to learn about eating disorders and hear about other people's stories is so important. And spread the message. If you hear someone talking about an eating disorder in a way that's just not true, or it's a common misconception, call them out, because we need to change the stigma. We need to change the idea of what it's like to have an eating disorder, because the problem is so many people go misdiagnosed, or it's not taken seriously enough, or people just don't have enough of an understanding to know how to help somebody. So yeah, that was this week's video. Let me know if you have any video topic suggestions. I have a couple lined up that I want to get to, but Please leave suggestions out in the comments, DM me on Instagram, email me. And of course, if you're interested in coaching, if you're struggling with your relationship with food, exercise, or your body, I am taking one-on-one clients right now. You can email me at annawegnercoaching@gmail.com. You can DM me on Instagram. And actually, my website is up and running now, so you can check out my website at annawegnercoaching.com. So excited about that. So anyways, I will see you guys in next week's video.